Hi there and welcome to part 2 of an introduction to weight management strategies. During the first part of this course, we looked at the physical health aspects to weight management and lifestyle. These are important to focus on if we want to make changes to our weight. As we established from part 1 of this webinar series, nutrition plays a huge role in weight management and food is a topic very close to many people's hearts. So today we'll be focusing more on the psychological aspects of managing our weight, discussing how emotions affect our eating and how we can manage this a little bit better. So as we move through the webinar, please feel free to make any notes or you can take a screenshot or photo of any of the slides that you find helpful too. The aims and objectives of the session today are to understand why we need food and how emotions influence our food intake. What are those sort of hunger or emotional cues that we might experience and how to respond differently to those emotional cues. So firstly, I'd like you to think about the evolution of food. So our caveman ancestors would have spent a lot of time searching for food by hunting and gathering, and resources would have been very limited compared to the access we have to these foods in today's world. So they would have needed to take on as many calories as possible for fast releasing energy. And that's in order to sort of fight or run away from predators. And they would have needed to have the drive to hunt and gather food almost straight after eating it in order to survive. So as time's gone on, our nutrition has evolved and changed, and we now have immediate access to food 24 hours a day, and we can get it from many different means. We also have more choice in food as well. However, our brains might still be engineered to give us the drive to search for food all the time, to gather and eat as much as we can, and crave quick-releasing energy foods. This may have an impact on the amount of food that we consume and the types of food choices that we make, and how our emotions might be connected to it all. So we have quite a complex relationship with food and we might use it for many different reasons. So not only for our survival and our nutrition, but also to socialise and meet with other people. We often structure our routines around our meals. And because of our caveman ancestors, we are usually more attracted to food that is higher in fat and sugar in order to take on as many calories or energy as we possibly can. Or sometimes we may crave caffeine for the same effect. Also, our brains might not tell us to limit our food because in the past we would have had to eat when we had the foods available in order for us to survive. However, in today's world, we don't have so many restrictions and we can access food at any point, but our brains might still be reacting the same way they did many years ago. So I'd like to ask you this question. So why can food be important in our culture or society? So I'm going to pause for a moment so you can have a think about that question now, and you might want to write down your answers. So what springs to my mind is we use food as an enjoyable thing to do with others. So we use it to socialise, and it really does bring people together. And we also use food for celebrations like birthdays, and we reward ourselves with food. So that could be for something positive like a promotion at work, or maybe something more negative like making it through a stressful day at work. So it makes a lot of sense as to why there's a lot of money in the food industry, because we use it for many different reasons. Food is a huge part of our culture and society. So as we move through this webinar, try to keep this in mind to help you understand how our emotions influence our eating. So it's important to keep in mind that there are many different messages in the media about food. So we get lots of reminders and messages throughout the day through various adverts on our TVs, radios and social media and things on our phones. So can you think of any adverts in particular that stick in your mind about food? So one I always think of is the M&M advert, where the lady is enjoying M&Ms on her own and her husband walks in and catches her in the act of eating the M&Ms without him. So this promotes the idea of indulging alone and secret eating, and it can lead to a real stigma around sort of treat foods. Or there's the Kit Kat advert that always really stands out. So you see someone sort of taking some time out and having a break and really enjoying their chocolate. There's also the Domino's adverts where they really set the scene, showing everyone sat at home, cosy and watching TV. So this is a scene that is very relatable to many people, and it's so accessible as you can simply order it online and have it delivered to your door within 30 minutes in most cases. Domino's have also tried to get across the idea of sharing pizza as a great way to be social. So they've advertised things like group orders and splitting the bills, making it easy for you to do that. Food is becoming more and more convenient, so ordering takeaways online, and it's particularly those unhealthier foods or more calorific foods. The media are really good at targeting the right audience as well. So for example, when you're sat at home watching television on a Friday or Saturday night, and then all the takeaway adverts start appearing on your TV, don't they? So have a think for a second, what are these messages doing to our brains? So does it get you thinking about food, and does it make you feel hungry sometimes? Or maybe it makes you have a craving for a certain food. So we can see that there's lots of different messages about food in the media, and they can really get inside our heads and it can catch us out. So on your screen now are two scenarios that I'd like you to imagine yourself in. So scenario one is you arrive late for work and feel stressed by your heavy workload. You then had a disagreement with someone. You later arrive home feeling overwhelmed after a stressful day. You're hungry. What would you grab? Okay, so have a little think about that for a moment and then write down your answer. I'm just going to pause for you to do that. And then we've got scenario two. So you saw a friend and had a good chat over a coffee on your break at work. You went for an hour's walk in the sunshine after work. You later arrive home in a positive mood after a good day. You're hungry. What would you grab? So have a think about that scenario as well and then write down your answer. So I'll pause again for you to do that. So it might be that you would grab exactly the same food for both scenarios, or maybe it is different. So have a think for a moment as to whether the food you would pick in each of the scenarios is sweet or savoury. Is it high calorie or low calorie? Is it an unhealthier option, high in sugar or saturated fat, like some chocolate, crisps, or maybe a takeaway? Or is it something healthier, like sort of fruit or a healthy home cooked meal maybe? So it's interesting to think about the choices that you would make in these two scenarios and how our different emotions can really drive what we eat. So research has shown that we are more likely to crave unhealthier, high-calorie, fatty or sugary foods when we are feeling low or experiencing negative emotions. And this is because these type of foods provide us with that quick energy fix or pick-me-up, and they're very comforting. It's also been found that eating food is often used to distract us from engaging in other activities or processing our emotions. We might use it to procrastinate from doing a boring task like housework, or maybe as a coping mechanism for uncomfortable emotions that we might experience. An example is during the pandemic, when we were in lockdown, you may have found that you were eating more due to boredom or the frustration of being stuck at home, or maybe it was feeling stressed with the uncertainty of everything. So we're now going to look at the reasons why this happens and the links between our gut and brain. So if our diet choices are often in response to our emotions, then over time this can lead to changes in our weight. So this might be weight loss from restricting eating, or weight gain from eating more energy than our bodies need. If we're feeling anxious, low or stressed, then not only does this affect our diet choices, but it can also lead to more stress hormone being released in the body, like adrenaline and cortisol. Although cortisol helps reduce stress, it can also stimulate our appetite or increase our blood sugar levels. And if this is frequently happening, then over time, this can lead to changes in our weight and other conditions as well, like type 2 diabetes developing. So as we know, the fight or flight or stress response is built within us due to our primitive ancestors. Back then, we would have needed quick releasing energy to fight or run away from our predators. And then we would have needed to have the drive to then search again for food to replenish our energy levels right away. However, in today's modern world, we don't need to fight or flight situations like we used to, but our bodies still go into the same stress response. So the survival mechanism of eating to take on as much energy as possible might still occur, as cortisol triggers our bodies to replenish our energy levels. So we've now discovered that different emotions may trigger us to make certain dietary choices. And these are internal factors, but there may also be external factors such as peer pressure from others or social situations, occasions or celebrations that might influence our eating as well. So this diagram on your screen is what happens when cortisol is released in the body. So ghrelin and leptin are the hormones that regulate our appetite. So physically, when ghrelin is present, this makes us feel hungry, whereas when leptin is present, this makes us feel full. So as you can see from process A on the left, when we're not experiencing stress, then these hormones work to balance our appetite well. Whereas looking at process B on the right, it shows that when we're stressed, cortisol triggers a higher production of ghrelin and restricts the production of leptin. So this means that we're more likely to overconsume food or drink as we'll feel very hungry. And it might take us a while to realise that we're actually full. As we know from part 1 of this webinar series, if this energy is not expended through physical activity, then this can lead to weight gain and it can impact your progress when trying to lose weight. So here's some other factors that can increase our cortisol levels. So specific health conditions such as diabetes, any disruption to other hormones within the body, so when women go through menopause maybe. Some medications such as steroids or antidepressants. And finally, many studies have shown that if we're not getting enough sleep, then this can lead to our stress response being triggered more. And it can also increase our cravings for sugary foods. So our digestive system, central nervous system and brain all work together to control the hunger-fullness system in the body. The brain is triggered by certain hormones to understand the body's nutritional status, and then it responds accordingly. So this system controls what we put into our bodies, so the types of food and drinks we consume, our pattern of eating, so how often we're eating, our thoughts and feelings towards food, so maybe craving certain foods in response to an emotion or for energy. The amount we eat, so our portion sizes. The energy we use through daily bodily processes, as well as our physical activity. And there's many things that can disrupt this system, which can then lead to a change in our body weight, and that might be positively or negatively. If we're regularly stressed, then we may eat more unhealthy, energy-dense foods and drinks. And this can lead to a quick burst in energy, but then we likely feel quite tired and hungry again soon after. So this would then mean we'd be more likely to overconsume calories and not feel like being active, which then might lead to weight gain. So in order to strengthen your hunger fullness system, try to maintain regular meal times. This will mean that you're less likely to eat in response to your emotions or have intense urges to eat certain foods or overconsume food. Try to do some daily exercise. This will help to boost your energy levels and reduce the chances of craving unhealthier, sugary or fatty foods. Try to include plenty of fruit, veg, whole grain carbohydrates and protein with your meals. This will help you to feel fuller for longer, have more balanced energy levels, and reduce the chances of snacking on unhealthier foods. So when we think about what motivates us to eat, we can break this down into physical and emotional cues. So physical cues such as hunger or thirst usually develop over time, or there might be sort of a specific time of day that you usually begin to feel these cues. And this happens because we require nutrition for our body and brains to function properly. So we might crave different food groups, so some whole grain carbohydrates for energy. We might crave sort of protein to help repair the cells in the body, or certain fruits or vegetables for different body and brain processes. We may also experience that feeling of being full, which lets us know we don't need to eat any more food, and that will sort of be our cue to stop eating. We may experience less negative feelings about food. So, for example, we shouldn't feel guilty for eating certain foods because we're only really consuming what our bodies need. Emotional cues, however, can develop quite suddenly, depending on what the emotion is that we're experiencing. So, for example, if we're feeling upset, experiencing low mood, or the opposite, feeling really positive after a good day and wanting to treat ourselves or reward ourselves with certain foods. We may have urges or cravings for certain foods or drinks, so maybe sugar or fat, and this may lead to over-consuming calories. This can then lead to us developing other emotions such as guilt or shame, and that can then impact our food choices over the next few days. So we might not end up eating enough by skipping meals, or we might give up being healthy altogether and continuing to eat in response to our emotions. So our food can actually be quite soothing for us as well. So different emotions can generate cravings towards certain foods, or it might influence how much food we eat. So just have a think for a moment. Do you ever use food to soothe yourself? If so, can you identify whether there's a certain emotion that you experience on a regular basis that can lead to a particular eating pattern? Or maybe it's a combination of different emotions, both positive or negative. So this scale can help you to identify whether you're hungry and whether you should eat food, or whether you're starting to feel full and should stop eating food. Ideally, we should eat food when we're around a 2 on the hunger scale before we become moderately or extremely hungry. If we get to a 3 or 4 on the hunger scale, then we're likely to eat in response to our emotions and crave more sugary or energy-dense foods. And we may consume more food than we actually need, or the opposite, and getting feelings of nausea and loss of appetite. So an example is if we skip a meal in our day. We should also only consume food until we're around a 2 on the fullness scale, as it can take up to 20 minutes for our bodies to feel full and satisfied. If we get to a 3 or 4 on the fullness scale, we may experience unwelcome emotions such as shame or guilt, or feelings of extreme tiredness, or even feelings of nausea, pain or discomfort. So an example of this is over-consuming food when we're eating out. So you might feel quite full, but you continue to eat as you want to sort of get your money's worth. Another thing to consider is, do you ever eat when you're neither hungry nor full? So this would mean that you're at a 1 on either the hunger or fullness scale. If so, it could be your usual routine driving your eating. So maybe always having a bar of chocolate with your morning coffee, or it could be your emotions such as boredom, or maybe an external factor such as socializing with someone. It can be useful to check in where you are on the scale when you eat, to establish whether you're eating due to hunger or due to another reason. It can also be useful to note if you go past a 2 on the fullness scale, to think about whether this happened because you had felt moderately or extremely hungry before consuming that food. Or maybe your eating was driven by your routine, emotions, or a social situation. So a food and drink diary can be a helpful tool to use if we want to understand a bit more about our diet and eating and drinking patterns. This can help you to identify what types of food or drinks you consume and whether you have a balanced diet and good fluid intake. It can also help you to identify certain foods or drinks that you might be over-consuming. It can be helpful to note whether any of the foods you consume are treat foods, because it is okay to have some treats in moderation. So things like meals out, takeaways, chocolate, cakes, biscuits, crisps. However, foods high in sugar, saturated fat or salt should be consumed in moderation and not regularly, so not every day. Another key thing to ask yourself here is, are any of the foods or drinks you consume for comfort? And are these connected to certain thoughts or feelings that you're experiencing? So think about where you are on the hunger fullness scale as well when you eat or drink. And it is important to be honest with yourself so you can identify areas to make changes in order to manage your weight better. You may find that making a small change to one area is all you need to do. However, it is important to allow your body time to adapt. So be patient with yourself if you do make any changes. So if we notice our routines, emotions, or being around certain people or in certain situations is influencing our food and drink consumption, we can try to respond differently. So we're now going to explore how we can do this. So step one is to isolate the cue. So you need to identify the cue that's initiating your current eating or drinking habit, as this is going to be the initiator of your new routine. And almost all habitual cues come from one of 5 sources. So it could be location, so a habit that's derived from being in a certain place. It could be time, a habit that's linked to a particular time of day. Your emotional state, where a habit emerges from a particular feeling that we experience. It could be other people, so when the habit is generated from cues that we get from being around specific people. And it could be immediately preceding action, so when the habit cue is linked to something that has just happened. So an example might be when I go to the supermarket, I do my weekly shop, I always buy an 8-pack of chocolate bars. And then later in the evening, I become bored, so I go to the fridge to get my chocolate bar. So the location, time of day, and my emotional state would be my cues. Then step 2 is to identify the routine. So this is the specific routine that you want to change. So when I go to the supermarket, I want to stop buying chocolate. And when I become bored in the evening, I want to stop going to the fridge to get the chocolate bar and then sitting down on the sofa to eat the chocolate bar. Step 3 is to experiment with the routine and rewards. So rewards are really important to have still, as we view them as a positive outcome from our routines. So this can be an intrinsic reward, so a certain feeling that you might want to experience, or it might be extrinsic, so an external physical reward like going to the cinema. So it can be helpful to ask yourself, what is it that I'm actually craving? Is it a certain feeling, or are you trying to combat boredom, sadness, or stress? It could be that you're craving some social interaction, or maybe you're craving sugar because you're experiencing low energy. So once you clarify what it is you're actually craving, this then allows you to change your current routine by doing something completely different, but still experiencing some sort of reward or positive outcome. Step 4 is to have a plan. So at first it might be helpful to write down the new habit that you want to form in as many places as you can. So you get that regular reminder. So maybe popping it on a post-it note on the fridge. So an example might be, when I go shopping, I'm going to buy fruit instead of chocolate bars, so I don't have chocolate in the house. And this will help me to lose weight, which is important to me because I want to live a longer, healthier life. When I get bored in the evening, I will go and have a bath because I enjoy doing that as well, and it's going to combat my boredom. So you could try putting alarms on your phone, writing notes to yourself, or just scheduling in these activities into your diary. Over time, these kind of reminders and things will be less and less required, but it can take time for the new habit to form. So make an initial plan as to what you want to do when you experience the cue. And then over the next few days, monitor how well you're sticking at your new routine. If you're struggling, you can try making some adjustments to the routine and the rewards and work out what's going to work best for you. Keep experimenting and amending and adapting until you find a new routine and reward that works for you, that's going to satisfy your craving. Once you establish this, do try and be consistent, and it won't be long before your habit feels more embedded and routinely another part of what you do. So it's important to consider how you eat. So have a look at the meals you eat. So can you plan the meals into your week and only purchase the ingredients you require to make those meals in order to make healthier choices day to day? Do you have a busy schedule and are you prone to multitasking? So eating in front of your desk at work or in front of the TV in the evening? If you're distracting yourself with other things whilst eating, then this can lead to forgetting to tune into that sort of hunger fullness scale, and it can actually lead to over-consuming calories. Consider what you're eating as well and how much you're eating of certain food groups. So do refer back to the Eat Well plate to make sure that you're getting the right balance and not over-consuming or under-consuming certain foods or drinks. Calories are important, so if you are trying to lose weight and you have a day where you consume too many calories, then see if you can have slightly less calories the next day by having smaller portions maybe, or eating foods that are more nutrient dense and less calorific. Or you could try being more physically active and expending those calories through more exercise. And finally, think about the hunger fullness scale. Are you hungry, or is your eating driven by something else? If you feel stressed, anxious, or experience low mood, think about whether there's some other ways of looking after yourself that will support you and allow you to feel better. So some examples might be going for a walk, doing some exercise, some yoga, mindfulness practice, maybe listening to some of your favourite music, calling a friend or a family member for a nice chat, some reading, something creative like colouring, painting, or maybe just completing your favourite hobby to distract you. Finding an activity that you enjoy brings you feelings of happiness and it will help to calm you. It can help you to begin to not associate food and drink as comfort, and it also brings about a sense of accomplishment rather than sort of feelings of guilt or shame. So another interesting concept to consider is mindful eating. So do you have a busy schedule and are you prone to eating whilst multitasking at work? Do you consume certain foods or drinks as part of your routine when you're not hungry and without even thinking about it? Or maybe you sit and eat whilst watching the TV. So it is easy to open a share bag of crisps, chocolate or sweets, and before you know it, you have eaten the whole lot. So if this sounds familiar to you, try to create more awareness around what you're consuming each day by being more mindful. So each time you eat, try to focus your attention on eating and avoid distraction from other activities or tasks where possible. If we eat whilst doing other things, it can take us a while to realise that we're actually full. So pay attention to what the food smells like, tastes like, and the textures or any sensations that you feel whilst eating the food. Take a moment to pause and think about where the food's come from and the journey it's been on to get to your plate. So this can not only slow down your eating and make you feel fuller quicker, but it can also make you feel more present and grateful for your food. So as we've discovered in this webinar, stress can really impact what we eat and drink and how much we consume. So here's some strategies to help you manage your stress better. So do some exercise because this releases endorphins, which are happy hormones, as well as reducing the body's level of stress hormones such as adrenaline or cortisol. So this can make you feel calmer and more relaxed, and it can also be a good distraction from how you're feeling mentally too. Or you could try distracting yourself by completing your favourite hobby, such as reading, arts and crafts, or playing an instrument. Finding an activity to focus on can help you live more in the present moment. Take time for self-care, so having a bath, listening to your favourite music, looking after yourself will make you feel good about yourself, and it will mean that you're more likely to want to look after other aspects of your health as well, so managing your weight, for example. Don't be afraid to ask for help or speak to people about how you're feeling, because it can really help to just offload, and you never know, a friend or family member might be able to help reduce your external stressors. Scheduling relaxation time, so yoga, mindfulness, meditations, and breathing exercises. This can really help the body to produce hormones that make you feel calmer and more relaxed. Practice good sleep hygiene by not going to bed hungry or full, avoiding caffeine in the evenings and limit it during the day as well. And reduce your screen time for the last hour before you go to bed. And maybe try and find an alternative activity that relaxes you instead of sort of stimulating your brain. Keep yourself hydrated, so aim to get 2 litres of fluids per day. So this includes water, squash, fruit juice, teas and coffees. However, it is important to remember that caffeine can prevent you from getting a good night's sleep, and fruit juice should be drank in moderation, so no more than 150 millilitres a day. Keeping hydrated reduces aches and pains and headaches, as well as making sure that the nutrients we get from the food that we eat gets transported around the whole body and the brain. It also increases our energy levels, making us more alert and productive. Making time for these activities can help you to manage your stress better day to day and reduce the likelihood of relying on food or drink as comfort. Okay, so one thing to remember is that progress doesn't happen in straight lines, and our plans don't always work out how we'd like them to. So this diagram actually comes from a weight loss study, and you can see from the diagram that people's weight started going down, but then you can see it's dipped up and down from January until September. But the key thing to note here is that their overall progress is heading in the right direction. So if you have a setback, don't give up. Think about your reasons for making these changes and then try to remember this graph. And remember that ups and downs are completely normal and they happen to everybody. And remind yourself that you still have the ability to make positive choices and head in the right direction overall. So for more information or support with managing your weight, you can visit the NHS website, which has some great recommended weight loss websites, apps and groups that you could try to help you to stay on track. The NHS Weight Loss app is the 12-week programme that helps you to lose weight safely and effectively and then maintain your weight thereafter. Or you could join a support group like Weight Watchers or Slimming World. I'll just leave that up for a moment in case you'd like to note anything down there. So to finish off, what can you take from this webinar to help you to manage your weight or your emotions and eating a bit better? So I'm going to pause for a second so you can have a little think about this question now, and then maybe try and write down 1 or 2 goals that you could start working on this week. Okay, so thank you for attending part 2 of an introduction to weight management. I hope that you've been able to take something from the session today to help you manage your weight better.